Mississippi, and we're joined by Starla Brown from Americans for Prosperity. Starla, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming in today.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for having me on today.
One of the things that we've talked about all week, it seems like, is the state income tax and how much better the state would be if the tax cuts happen. Some of the legislation continues to stall, and I know eventually, I think Governor Tate Reeves would love to see the income tax completely abolished.
Yeah, obviously House Bill 1 came out very early in the session. The Senate has now, put out their version a little bit later, and the governor again this morning was calling out the Senate about, taking action. And so I think, that was on social media, but I think one of the things for us, we've certainly been involved in the conversations in terms of talking to legislators and leadership. We sent out press release even at the summit that the House had last fall. We attended. There's a kind of a point of view that we have, and so what I'm going to say at this point, there are good things in the bills and there are bad things in the bills in terms of that point of view. And so right now, I think our top line message is going to be the House and Senate have to come together. We do want to eliminate the income tax in Mississippi. So how do we get there? Top thing for us on the list, look at spending. And I think that that's got to be part of the conversation, like when we talk about, a negative effect. If you're going to continue to raise spending and then cutting the taxes, where does the money come from, right? So it's going to come from somewhere. We have a point of view that sometimes maybe is not as comfortable for everyone, is that we believe that goods and services should be taxed equally. So when you're looking at the grocery tax, that sort of taking that particular piece and reducing it. The Senate plan doesn't reduce it by as much as the House. So there's a couple of things there that we've been looking at. And, and then obviously there's the gas tax, right? And so for a lot of people, some people don't view that as a consumption tax, right? And they don't look at how does that come across? And there's differences between the two plans. So for right now, I think people have got to get in the room. They got to really start talking. So that means the Senate's got to come to the table and start, working with the House on this. Their plan does not go to a complete elimination, which could somewhat look like what we call a trigger. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's an ability for when you're doing an income tax reduction like that to not let the budget get out of balance, right? So you don't want to go so fast that you may get unstable. And I think that that's sort of where they're erring on that side of caution. But the House plan does do this over 10 years. There's a little bit of stuff up front that some people, our activists, have said to us they have concerns about because they feel like the offsets are a little bit later in the game. So there's just a lot to talk about there. But at this point, we do need to start talking about it seriously because the longer term outcome of eliminating that does, hopefully put us in a position to have that prosperity, right, and the economic growth.
Lots to unpack there, Starla. So let's look at the plan. I mean, obviously, we want a balanced budget. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Mississippi is one of the few states that is successfully balancing the budget. Mm-hmm. But we still have expenses and need to have the revenue to be able to pay for the programs that the state needs to continue. But there, as with all the states and on a federal level, a ton of waste, fraud, and abuse as well that could be cut to right. Where we're not going to have to make up that big of a gap by eliminating the income tax. And if everybody is participating in the process through a consumption tax, if you want to call it that, then we're all really paying more accurately a fair share.
Yeah, I think that that's the case, right? There are plenty of people out there that are not paying any income tax in the state. And so, the tax base gets broadened by different means of collecting revenue. And so I think, yeah, I mean, we have to really look at both of these plans. Maybe if we could take the good from both and figure this out, that'd be great. But I know the House is very intent on a full elimination. And I think most of the people in Mississippi would say, let's not tax our work, right? Let's not tax work. Let's figure out how to get this revenue other way. However, we are a state where this is a large part of the budget, so we do have to have the right types of triggers in place. You talked about something there with spending, right? So we're looking at this at the federal government right now with DOGE. There's just not that jaw-dropping stuff wasn't there all along, There's plenty of people in Congress who put out annual reports about, wasteful spending and, the abuse of that.
It's always eye-opening.
Yeah, it's always eye-opening. I'm like, I don't know. All these scientific projects that we fund, and most of us could care less about, right? Because the average American is getting up every day, going to work, wanting to put food on their table, roof over their head, raise their family, and live their best life and their American dream. And so I think it's important for us to think about that, not just at the federal level, but at the state level. So what could we cut in spending as an offset? I think that's a question we're not talking about enough. What is in government right now that isn't actually the proper role of government that we're funding? We have a lot of agencies in Mississippi who have the ability to make rules.
Certainly some consolidation, some streamlining would work to that end.
That's something we've talked a little bit about, and I know this is going to be really unpopular when I say it, but I did
join the club. I seem to be finding unpopular opinions this morning.
So one of the things that we looked at this year when we were looking at education in the state budget, I just did a simple AI search between Florida. I'm from Mississippi. I grew up in Meridian. It's my hometown. But I spent 35 years in Florida and worked for AFP there as well. So coming back, 3 years now, I was just kind of researching the school superintendents, right? Because we had a lot of pushback about what we call open enrollment or public-to-public school transfers. And we already have it. We just wanted to tweak one aspect of that, which was the sending school not having the veto power when the accepting school was prepared to take a child on and have them attend the school. So I looked at the number of superintendents and did a simple AI search, and it was like through 2023. But when you look at the population of Florida, which is almost 10 times the population of Mississippi,
right. Superintendents per capita number is grossly out of ratio.
It's basically double. And so you start to ask a question in a small county with a city, why can't you have just the one superintendent there? And so I know that's not popular. I'm sure people are going to hear this today and really say, where are you heading there?
Well,
but
it's the same struggle so many corporations have in top-heavy management.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's study after study out there that just shows that a lot, everybody's, we need more funding and money. And look, the House fought very hard and finally negotiated with the Senate last session to get a per pupil funding formula, right? Before that, you needed an accountant, you needed someone. I still don't understand it to this day, but it just didn't make sense. It wasn't a simple funding formula. And so you have all these districts and you have funding that goes with them. So the House did adjust the original bill, which would have put, I think, about $5 million more into actual education funding, and so to account for those differences between the districts, if a child transferred and their parents made that decision. But at the end of the day, couldn't get that through the Senate. So not sure why. It was such a simple bill. It gave opportunity to families in this that have kids trapped in failing schools, for example.
Starla, I don't know if you have this number. So we're talking to Starla Brown, Americans for Prosperity. Any idea what it would mean to the typical Mississippian's wallet, checking account, if we eliminate the income tax? How much more money do we have for discretionary spending? What additional taxes how much additional it may cost if we're paying through a consumption tax?
I don't know that I have that solid number to say this is what happens, but here's what I will say. You'd have to buy a whole lot of groceries and an enormous amount. I've heard numbers as high as $5,000 when you research it in order to, if you look at what the tax on work is and what would be refunded to you. So I think at the end of the day, obviously, Mississippians would be better off if we're not taxing work. Consumption taxes don't just apply to Mississippians, right? They apply to everybody who visits our state. So, that broadens your tax base.
The other thing that's hard to quantify is we've seen in other states that have eliminated their income tax successfully is the number of people that it brings in for new residents and new businesses that may choose Mississippi to locate. And that increases your tax base, your revenue base as well.
Absolutely.
Starla Brown, Americans for Prosperity. Can you stick around for another segment? Let's talk about the 601 Blueprint.
Absolutely.
Mornings with Richard Cross continues on SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm Scott Sands sitting in. Thank you so much for letting me hang out with you this week. Starla Brown is in studio right now from Americans for Prosperity, the state director from Mississippi. Starla, there's more to do in Jackson than just eliminate the income tax. And Americans for Prosperity have a 601 blueprint of how to move the state forward. Let's get into some of these other things that really need to be done in Mississippi.
Okay, so what do you want to talk about first on that blueprint?
Let's start with healthcare, which is an area that's frustrated me for years now. I mean, obviously, Republicans, conservatives opposed Obamacare, and every election it's we need to fix healthcare, but I've yet to see a solid plan, and that filters down to the state level as well.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying because that's frustrating for a lot of people. It's like, what's actually the plan? So we have some policy plans, and I'm going to encourage you on the federal level to just tell people to take the time and go to the personal option. I think it's thepersonaloption.com actually is the website. But there is legislation slowly moving or for consideration at the federal level. And what I often say to people is it was not one thing that got us into this healthcare crisis. It was a number of things over a number of years, right? Bad pieces of policy, kicking the can down the road, whatever it looks like. And so at the end of the day, it's not going to be, there's not a silver bullet that's going to fix everything in healthcare. It's going to be a combination of looking at good policies that when combined together make healthcare more affordable and more accessible and remove the barriers that are keeping people from having access. We've brought to this state Dr. Lee Gross. He's down in Northport, Florida. He turned around not only his practice, but a hospital there with the primary care type of model, and he teaches this model to doctors all over the country. And there was a hospital there in not in North, but near there, that was one of the most failing hospitals in the state of Mississippi. And one of the things that hospitals have as a cost is the health care for their own, employees. So he realized a lot of his employees were seeing him as a doctor anyway. They turned the model around, and those people that work at that hospital, have free health care because they contracted and saved them money. It was their second highest cost. And so there are all of these different kind of scenarios out there that when you put them together and you really get serious about it. But the top of the list for us at the state level has been certificate of need repeals. Mississippi has a lot of certificate of need laws, and so the best way for me to explain it to everyone, and normally when we talk to people around the state, our activists...
It's such a complicated topic to bring up.
It is complicated, but I'm going to narrow it down for you. I don't think when Target wants to open a store, they go to Walmart and ask permission, and then have to go to the government to get permission to open up down the street, right, as competition. So that's kind of a simplified way, but let's really talk about it from the perspective of that we have these different areas of certificate of need, and within those there's like subcategories. So let's just say a doctor's office, a clinic, a hospital wanted to, get a new MRI machine. They have to go apply and get permission from the government. There's a cost to that application. We've heard from people who have testified in committees, off session, about the cost of competition fighting. Your competition could actually then say, no, we don't want this issued. They can fight you in court. It can be, in some cases, I've heard, someone say as much as they spent $450,000 and then just had to walk away from it because they just kept being fought on it. So the thing is like, it's simple economics, supply and demand, right? Those are the kind of things that we're talking about. It's been since Reagan, every president from Reagan to Biden, and now, of course, Trump in again, have said we need to do away with these laws. They don't make sense. They're not a free market principle. And,
And again, follow the money and find out why the legislatures, why the congressmen are not repealing and changing the laws, and you'll find some pretty solid lobby groups behind that. Again, this is such a complicated issue. We're not going to be able to cover it all fully, Starla, but I think it's important to check out the 601 Blueprint at AmericansForProsperity.org. It gets into all of those aspects of reforming healthcare, education, which we've talked about this year, and I think the concept of an education savings account is a great idea as we're we're moving forward towards school choice options as well. Starla Brown, thank you so much for coming in.
Sure.
It's Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm Scott Sands at Scott Sands Media on X, and the C Spire text line is still going from earlier this morning as well. We've got Fox News, SuperTalk Mississippi News next, and try to have some fun to wrap up the show next hour.